Hello there, dear friends. This is Bob Hatton, and I'm back with an encouraging word, and I'm inviting to you, come on, let's go together. Let's go over to Bethlehem. That's what the shepherds said to one another after the angel appeared to them and told them that something very special had happened in Bethlehem, namely that Christ the Lord has been born there. And as we're coming now towards Christmas, we're thinking about Bethlehem. Bethlehem is maybe in our minds because it's there where Jesus was born. And we've seen already that there are a lot of aspects of Bethlehem. And I said that although it is a physical place, it is also an attitude of our heart that we have. And so this is the call, what I'm speaking to us. Let's go to Bethlehem. Now, we've been having a look at David, this young guy who was anointed to be king over the whole of Israel. And whilst it looked like God was doing something, he opened doors so that very early on he could enter the king's house. He knew the king, he had influence with the king and so on. But then everything seemed to go wrong. The king tried to kill him, and David had to flee for his life. And he fled. He was on the run for many years. I think about 25 years he was on the run. And then Saul was killed in a battle fighting against the Philistines. And David was anointed as king, but not over the whole of Israel, just over his tribe, over the tribe of Judah. And he moved out of the very dry wilderness, the Judean wilderness, and he moved to the city of Hebron. And in Hebron, he was anointed to be king over Judah. But of course, his yearning was to become king over Israel. And there was a civil war going on. Judah was fighting against the other tribes. One of the sons of Saul was a man called Ishbosheth, and he had made himself king. And there was a lot of fights going on, skirmishes, battles, and so on. But finally, Ishbosheth was killed. And Saul's men, they came over to David. Some of them had defected even earlier, but they asked David to come on. We want you to be king. We want to serve you as king. And so finally, he was anointed as king over all of Israel. He'd reached his senate. He'd reached the peak, the high point of his career, and he realized that he needed somewhere for his capital city. And he decided it'd be good if he could go to Jerusalem. Jerusalem was a city that was it wasn't in Judah, it was just in Benjamin, but it's very close to the border with Judah, and that would be a very nice gesture. It also had some meaning because it was this place where Abraham wanted to sacrifice Isaac. But there was a city there. We already mentioned it a few days ago. It was being kept though by the Jebusites, another tribe, another Canaanite tribe. And Joshua didn't manage to capture it, or didn't want to capture it. It didn't really have very much meaning. It wasn't military. It wasn't very important. It wasn't economically important. Later, it would become very important as far as the religious scene was concerned, because the temple would be built there. But it wasn't very important. But David, somehow it was on his heart to take Jerusalem, because Jerusalem would be a good place for a capital city. But of course, as I said, the Jebusites were there. So he had to go and conquer it first of all. So he moved against Jerusalem. And when the Jebusites came and saw him coming, they said, well, even if the lame and the blind would defend Jerusalem against David, David would have no chance. And they were extremely confident that they could hold the city against David. And in the next verse in the Bible, when you read this story, it just says, and so David took the city. Yeah, he captured the city. He made Jerusalem to be his capital city, and he was anointed to be king over the whole of Israel there. But he had something else. He had another yearning in his heart. He was now king over all of Israel, but that wasn't enough for him. What he wanted was that the presence of God filled the center of the nation. He wanted God to come and live in Jerusalem. And God dwelt where the Ark of the Covenant was. The Ark of the Covenant was a piece of furniture that was in the tabernacle back in the days of Moses. And even in the days of Saul, the tabernacle was still standing, and the Ark of the Covenant was in there. And the Ark of the Covenant was simply just a little wooden box. It was 1 meter 20 by 60 centimeters by 80 centimeters. Not very big at all. It was made out of acacia wood, and it was covered over with gold, and it had a lid on top, and on top of the lid were two cherubims. And the Ten Commandments had been put in there. The stick, Aaron's rod that started to bud was in there. There was a pot with some manna, and I think that was about it. But God lived there. God chose to live there. He didn't want to live in any of these big temples. You know, the pagan people, they built big temples for their gods to show that their gods were great and so on. But God wasn't interested in that. But there was power. Everywhere where the Ark of the Covenant went, there was power. And I think it's Psalm 68, where it's when Moses blew in the trumpet and it was time to move on. The Levites would pick up the Ark of the Covenant. They would put it on their shoulders. It's time to go. When they did that, all the mountains began to shake. There was earthquakes going on. There's so much power. The divine power of God was concentrated around this box. And that's where God said, that's where I live. And when the tabernacle was put up, he went at the front of he was put in the front of the tabernacle in what we call the Holy of Holies, the most holy place in the tabernacle. And people didn't see him, but he was there, and his presence was there. And things happened when people got close to his presence. So, of course, David knew all of this. Saul didn't bother about that, and he'd lost the Ark of the Covenant during his reign, and actually the Philistines have stolen it. They didn't have a good time with the Ark of the Covenant, so they sent it back to Israel, and now it had got lost somewhere. Somebody put it in a shed, and nobody bothered about it. But now David is king, and he has such a yearning, and he wants God to come and dwell in the midst of the nation. So he finds out where it is, and he gets ready. He prepares a place in Jerusalem, actually on Mount Zion. He prepares a place for the Ark of the Covenant, and he goes and gets it. Now, the first time he tries it, everything goes wrong. He makes a lot of mistakes. He didn't listen to what God has said about this. He puts it on a cart, and the guy who's driving the cart gets killed because God's fury is revealed here. He's so disgusted about the way they're moving the Ark of the Covenant. So David gives it to a guy called Obed-Edom, who looks after it for a few months, while David finds out, what have I done wrong? And then they come back and they bring the Ark of the Covenant into the into Jerusalem, and it's every few meters that they carry the Ark of the Covenant. They sacrifice an animal, then it goes a little bit further. Another animal is sacrificed until they finally get to Jerusalem, and there's such celebration and there's such worship there, because now God is coming to the center of our life in the nation, and David really celebrates, and then they start to worship God, and this worship goes on. It's 24 hours a day, and it's for 7 days a week, and there's so many prophetic ministry going on there, and a lot of the Psalms are written. When we read the Psalms, we see that there is a yearning that God will reign in Zion, and that the word of God will go out from Zion, that the nations will come, and so on and so forth. I say it's a yearning because it didn't really happen, and things start to go wrong because David is no longer in the wilderness where he has to depend upon God. David's now in the city. And what went wrong and how things developed, well, that's for tomorrow. So I hope you can join me, because this is now very, very interesting. Okay, see you then. Bye-bye.